a bonus, let me show you how to use the weighted average formula calculation that we talked about in a previous video, linked below, to calculate your grade in a class where your categories have different weights. The calculation is really the same. It's really just your grade for each category times the weight percent for that category. And you just sum all of those together. So your grade in category 1 plus your grade in category 2 times that weight, all the way down for all of the categories in your class. So for this class, it looks like you have a 94% in your homework, and the homework is weighted as 5% of the grade. You add to that your grade in your quizzes. Looks like you have an 83% in your quizzes. That's okay. Quizzes are weighted less. They're meant for you to grow. Looks like they're weighted about 10% of your grade. And you add to that your grade on your unit exams. Look like you have an 87 on the unit exams. Good, you're growing from your quizzes, and that is weighted at 65% of the course. And finally, looks like you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You studied really hard for the final exam, and you got a 92% on the final exam. Way to go. And that final exam is worth 20% of your grade. When you do the math then, and you take the grade category times its weight, and you add all of those together, for this course, it looks like your final grade will be an 87.95%. Very well done. Let's look at a higher Ninja level where there's some extra credit involved. The good news when there's extra credit involved is that the math really doesn't change. We still take the grade category, so it looks like you still have a 94% in your homeworks, and that's still worth 5% of the grade. And you still add the rest of the categories and their weights together. 83% for quizzes at 10% of your grade, 87% for your unit exams at 65% of your grade, and 92% on your final exam at 20% of your grade. With extra credit, we just add it to the score. So you did all of the extra credit. Well done. You get 100% of your extra credit, and the extra credit added 2.5% to your grade. Before, when we did the math, we had an 87.95 grade in our course. Now we get all of the 2.5 points of extra credit. So 87.95, we add that in, and that brings us up to a 90.45%. You made it over the 90% mark. Way to go doing that extra credit. Let's look at one more scenario, the highest Ninja level, which is probably the most common scenario you will use throughout the course. The most common scenario is where one of the categories, probably the final exam, it hasn't been filled in yet. You haven't taken the final exam, but you still want to know what your grade is in the course. You just need to update this formula slightly. We divide each individual weight by the total percent of all the categories that have a grade so far. We divide the individual weight by the total weight percent of all the graded categories with grades so far. We've technically been doing this all along. Let me explain. Our first category is our homework category. We still have a 94% in our homework, and it's still worth 5% of the total course. But what we're going to do now is we're going to divide the 5% by the total percent of all of the graded categories. We have the homework, the quizzes, and the unit exams. We don't count the extra credit. That's extra credit. So the homework, the quizzes, and the unit exams add up to 80%. So we divide our 5% by 80% to get the individual weight when we have a blank category. We've technically been doing this all along. When we had grades in every category, the sum total of all of the weights added up to 100%. So we were dividing 5% by 100% by 1, and that just still gave us 5%. So technically, we've been doing this all along. It only matters now that one of our grade categories is empty. We divide by the total weight percent of all of the categories with grades so far, not including the extra credit. And we just keep going from there. So we add in our 83% on our quizzes. The quizzes are worth 10% of the grade, but now we're going to divide that by the 80% total so far for the course. We still have a 87% on our unit exams. Unit exams are still worth 65% of the grade, but now we're going to divide that by the 80% total for the course so far. We don't do anything for the final exam. We don't have a score. We have a score of 0, so when we multiply by 0, it's not going to do anything. So we leave that out so far because we don't have a grade there yet. Finally, extra credit is still extra credit. So we haven't done all the extra credit so far for the semester. We've only done about 3/5 of it. That's okay. We still have time. And we multiply that by the straight 2.5% that it's worth in the course. It is extra credit. It's on top of the course total so far. So we don't divide it by the 80% because extra credit is extra. So our big change here is we divided each individual weight percent by the sum total weights of all of the graded categories so far. We've been doing that all along. We've just been dividing by 1 before, so we didn't really account for it before. When we do the math here, when we add all these up, we see that our current course grade right now is an 88.44%. So we've got some room to improve. We can really study for the final exam, get some more extra credit, really get that back up over 90% for the grade that we want in the course. This is how we use the same weighted average formula for chemistry to figure out our grade in a course with categories with weighted grades.
Thanks for joining us today, Ninjas. Be sure to watch these other videos to level up your Ninja training even more. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe.